The last time this happened, ordinary people turned their dreams into millions. For Jamie, that headline felt like a distant echo from another world. She sat at her kitchen table in a cramped apartment that smelled faintly of burnt toast and old coffee, scrolling through her phone. Her fingers hovered over the screen, hesitant. She read about college dropouts launching apps that overnight made them millionaires. Stories of taxi drivers who had invested in obscure cryptocurrencies and now owned luxury cars. The headlines made her stomach churn, not with envy, but with the strange, sharp thrill of possibility. Jamie leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Her life had been the definition of ordinary for years. A 9-to-5 desk job that drained her, weekends lost to errands, and evenings spent binge-watching shows she barely cared about. Dreams had once existed, tucked away somewhere behind the monotony of bills and responsibilities. But they had faded, replaced by survival. Yet that morning, something shifted. Maybe it was the sun cutting through the gray haze of the city, or the coffee finally hitting her system, but Jamie felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Her dream wasn't vague, it was precise. She wanted to create something that connected people differently. Something that changed how strangers became collaborators, friends, or even allies in the chaos of modern life. But as she sipped her lukewarm coffee, the rational voice in her head whispered the familiar refrain. "You're not ready. You'll fail. Why risk everything?" That evening, she met Malik at their usual corner cafe, a small, dimly lit place with cracked tiles and a stubborn smell of cinnamon that lingered in the air. Malik was her best friend since college, the one person who had been there through failed relationships, late-night coding sessions, and jobs they both hated. "Tell me you didn't call me here to complain about the news again," Malik said, sliding into the booth with a sigh. Jamie laughed, a nervous, jittery sound. "No, Malik, I have an idea." Malik raised an eyebrow. "You always have an idea. Last time it nearly got you evicted." "This one's different," Jamie insisted, her hands shaking slightly. "I think I can actually do this. I've been thinking we could create a platform that—" She paused, searching for the words. "It connects people in a way that makes networking seamless but meaningful. Not just shallow likes and follows, but real collaboration, real opportunities." Malik leaned back, skepticism written all over his face. "Jamie, people have been trying variations of that forever. You think you're the first one? You're going to pour your life into this, and for what?" "For a chance," she said softly, almost to herself. "For a chance to actually make something that matters. And maybe, just maybe, turn a dream into reality." Malik studied her, seeing something different in her eyes. Determination. Fire. Something he hadn't seen since college, when they had both stayed up all night coding apps that never saw the light of day. "You're serious," he said finally. "I am," Jamie replied. The next morning, Jamie woke before sunrise, the city still wrapped in a soft gray haze. She couldn't wait any longer. The apartment felt suffocating, as if the walls themselves were whispering doubts. She brewed coffee, the bitter aroma filling the room, and sat by the window, looking out at the streets slowly coming to life. She didn't just see cars and pedestrians, she saw possibility in motion. By the time Malik arrived, Jamie had already rented a tiny co-working space downtown, bought a domain, and sketched out wireframes on sheets of scrap paper. "I know it's crazy," she said, spreading the papers across the table. "But if we start now, even small steps, we could build this before anyone notices. We could actually do it." Malik ran a hand over his face, torn between concern and excitement. "Jamie, this is insane. Where do we even start? Funding, coding, legal, the list is endless. And what if we fail?" Jamie smiled, a mix of nervousness and resolve. "Then we learn, Malik. We try again. But we won't know unless we start. Ordinary people becoming millionaires isn't magic. It's courage, timing, and relentless action. And I want to take that chance." Days blurred into nights. The co-working space became their sanctuary. Whiteboards filled with diagrams, sticky notes crowded every surface, laptops hummed constantly. Jamie and Malik worked tirelessly, fueled by endless cups of coffee and a stubborn refusal to sleep more than a few hours at a time. Every coding error was a small victory when solved. Every breakthrough felt monumental. Yet the world outside didn't pause for their dreams. Competitors were launching similar ideas, investors were skeptical, and friends, well-meaning friends, warned Jamie she was risking too much. Doubts crept in like shadows. Maybe this is too big. Maybe you're too late. Maybe you should just go back to your safe life. One evening, exhausted and frustrated, Jamie slammed her laptop shut. Malik looked up, concerned. "Bad day?" "You have no idea," she groaned. "Nothing's working. Every line of code feels wrong. Every pitch feels like a lie. Maybe I'm not cut out for this." By midnight, the co-working space was quiet, except for the hum of their laptops. Jamie stared at the code she had been struggling with for hours, her mind racing. The possibilities stretched out before her like the city outside, bright, endless, unpredictable. She realized then that fortune doesn't favor the timid, the cautious, or the comfortable. It favors the bold, the persistent, the ones who act when the world hesitates. And she was ready. Every morning began with ritualistic optimism. Jamie would arrive first, armed with fresh coffee and a checklist she had rewritten half a dozen times the night before. Malik followed soon after, usually bleary-eyed but equally determined, carrying a thermos of bitter tea that seemed to fuel his stubborn focus. They called themselves creators, though in truth they were somewhere between dreamers and masochists, balancing on the thin line between genius and exhaustion. The early days were brutal. Coding errors that should have been simple fixes swallowed entire afternoons. Designs they thought perfect were rejected, either by each other or by early testers. Every setback gnawed at their confidence. And yet, somewhere in the chaos, they found their rhythm. Failure was no longer a monster waiting outside the door. It became a guide. Each mistake sharpened their understanding, taught them a new way to approach users, and made them rethink assumptions they hadn't even realized they were holding. It was Malik who first noticed the shift. One night, around 2 a.m., they were reviewing user feedback from a small beta group. Jamie's shoulders were stiff, her eyes red from staring at screens that refused to cooperate. She rubbed her temples. "Malik, maybe we're too late. Maybe the market's saturated. Maybe people just don't need this." Malik didn't reply immediately. He scanned the feedback again, squinting at the numbers and the comments. Then he looked at Jamie, and for the first time, she saw a spark in his eyes that mirrored her own determination. "Jamie," he said finally, "look at this. People love it. They're actually using it. They're talking about it. We've tapped into something they didn't even know they wanted. This isn't about being first. It's about being meaningful. And we are." Her heart skipped. It was the first time in weeks she truly believed it. Perhaps this dream wasn't impossible after all. With renewed energy, they began to reach out to investors. The calls were exhausting, the meetings intimidating. Every pitch felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of sharp-toothed doubts. Some investors laughed at their ideas. Others offered vague advice with no follow-through. One prominent venture capitalist even suggested, "Why not just sell it to a bigger company and cut your losses?" But Jamie and Malik refused. The dream was theirs, fragile and raw, and they would not abandon it for comfort. Then, after months of persistence, they received a breakthrough. A small, reputable tech incubator, impressed by their prototype and passion, agreed to provide seed funding. It wasn't a fortune, just enough to cover salaries, cloud storage, and the next phase of development. But it was validation. They weren't just two people with a crazy idea. Someone else believed in them too. With funding secured, the pace accelerated. They hired 2 junior developers, rented a slightly larger workspace, and began refining their platform. The nights became longer. Days were spent coding, troubleshooting, and redesigning. Even small progress was celebrated like victory, with high fives, cups of instant coffee, and occasional bursts of laughter that felt almost forbidden in the intensity of their focus. One night, after a particularly grueling debugging session, Jamie sat back and rubbed her eyes. Malik was still at the keyboard, muttering curses at a stubborn line of code. "You know," Jamie said quietly, "sometimes I forget why we're doing this. It's exhausting. I barely see sunlight. We're living on coffee and adrenaline." Malik glanced up, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Yeah, but remember that article we read about ordinary people turning dreams into millions? That's us. We're living the grind. Nobody said it would be easy, but we're actually in the game now." Jamie smiled, a small, tired smile that carried more weight than any celebration ever could. He was right. The grind wasn't just a burden. It was proof they were moving, proof they were alive in the spaces where dreams became reality. Then came the first taste of real success. Early adopters began spreading the word. Downloads spiked. Engagement metrics soared. The tiny user base they had painstakingly cultivated turned into thousands, and the platform started trending organically. One evening, Jamie opened the analytics dashboard and froze. "Malik, look at this." He leaned over her shoulder, eyes widening. "Are you serious?" "Yes," Jamie said, voice shaking. "We're trending nationally. People are actually noticing. They're using it." For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of laptops. Then, almost instinctively, they high-fived, laughed, and hugged. The moment was fleeting, but it cemented something unspoken between them. The dream was no longer a flicker in the dark. It was alive. Investors started calling more seriously now. Offers came in faster than they could track, each more tempting than the last. They received invitations to conferences, interviews, and even awards for innovation. The ordinary lives they had led just months ago felt like a distant memory. Jamie and Malik were no longer just dreamers. They were emerging players in a competitive, fast-moving industry. Despite the excitement, the pressure was immense. Each new milestone brought new challenges. The platform had to scale, security protocols had to be flawless, and the team had to grow without losing the spark that made them unique. Jamie learned to sleep less, think faster, and delegate intelligently. Malik became her anchor, the one who reminded her to pause when anxiety threatened to drown her focus. Together, they navigated the storm, leaning on each other in ways they hadn't anticipated. And yet, every night, when the office lights dimmed and the city fell into quiet, Jamie would look out the window at the skyline and feel that familiar pulse of fear and excitement. The thought of failure was always there, lurking in the corners, but now it no longer paralyzed her. It sharpened her. The climb was steep, unpredictable, and terrifying, but it was real, and it was theirs. One particularly cold night, Malik turned to Jamie, exhaustion etched into his features. "Do you realize what we've done?" he asked quietly. Jamie shook her head. "Not yet. I'm too scared to think about it. What if it all collapses tomorrow?" Malik chuckled softly. "That's the thing. It might collapse. But it also might change everything. Ordinary people don't become millionaires by waiting. They become millionaires by daring to act when the world hesitates. And we're acting. That's enough for now." Jamie nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and determination. They were climbing, yes, but the view from each rung of the ladder was breathtaking. The possibilities stretched endlessly, each step forward opening doors they hadn't imagined existed. For the first time, Jamie understood that the climb itself was transformative. It wasn't just about success, it was about resilience, courage, and the willingness to step into uncertainty with open eyes. As dawn broke over the city, painting the skyline in shades of gold and pink, Jamie returned to her laptop, fingers poised above the keyboard. The platform needed updates, bugs needed fixing, and investors needed reports. But in that moment, she paused. She allowed herself a brief smile, knowing that ordinary people had, once again, turned their dreams into something extraordinary, and she and Malik were proof that it could happen again. The climb was far from over. The next challenge, the next breakthrough, the next miracle was just around the corner, and Jamie was ready to meet it head-on. A year had passed since Jamie first dared to turn her dream into reality. A year that had felt like a lifetime, filled with sleepless nights, endless coding sessions, and moments of doubt sharp enough to cut through her determination. Yet here she was, standing in the corner of their now spacious office, watching the city lights twinkle like a mirror of her own journey. The once cramped co-working space had become a hub of activity. Junior developers typing furiously, designers debating fonts and layouts, and Malik pacing with a coffee cup in hand, a mixture of exhaustion and triumph written across his face. Their platform had grown beyond anything they had imagined. Millions of users worldwide relied on it daily. Investors who had once laughed at their pitches were now competing for a stake in the company. Headlines that once seemed absurd, ordinary people turning dreams into millions, now had her name on them. Jamie had gone from a woman quietly dreaming in a tiny apartment to someone the tech world both admired and envied. Yet, despite the financial success, the wealth she had amassed was not what she treasured most. Jamie had learned early on that money could provide freedom, but could never replace the exhilaration of creation, the satisfaction of solving a problem, or the pride of building something meaningful from scratch. She walked past the rows of desks, watching her team at work, and felt a quiet pride. This was her real reward, the ability to create, to impact, and to inspire. The office door opened, and Malik joined her by the window. The city stretched out below them like a living tapestry. "Remember the first day we rented this place?" he asked, a nostalgic smile tugging at his lips. Jamie laughed softly. "I do. We had one laptop between us, a few sticky notes, and more coffee than any human should consume. Look at us now." Malik shook his head. "Look at you now. You did all of this. I just helped keep you sane." Jamie shook her head. "We did it together. You kept me from giving up when I wanted to quit." For a moment, they stood in silence, letting the gravity of their journey settle over them. Jamie remembered the endless nights of debugging, the investors who doubted them, the moments of panic when the server crashed or a crucial feature failed just before a launch. She remembered the fear, the anxiety, and the temptation to retreat to safety. And yet, here they were, living proof that ordinary people could, indeed, turn dreams into millions. A notification pinged on Jamie's phone. She opened it and saw the latest download metrics. Another surge in users from a new market overseas. She smiled. The climb hadn't ended, it had only evolved. Success was no longer a static destination. It was a moving horizon, one that demanded creativity, resilience, and vision at every step. That evening, Jamie was invited to a live interview on a national talk show. As she sat backstage watching the bustling crew and lights, she felt a wave of nerves she hadn't experienced in months. Despite her achievements, the human part of her, the girl who had stared at her ceiling in a cramped apartment, wondering if she had the courage to act, still trembled before big moments. When the host introduced her, the applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed, lights illuminated the set, and Jamie walked to her seat, heart pounding with anticipation. The first question came. "Jamie, how did you do it? How did ordinary people like you turn a dream into millions?" She paused, taking a breath. The answer was obvious yet complex. It wasn't luck. It wasn't just timing. It wasn't a single act of genius. It was persistence, resilience, and a refusal to quit in the face of every reason to give up. "Honestly," she began, voice steady, "there is no secret. There's no magic formula. What made the difference was daring to start, daring to continue, and daring to believe in our vision when no one else did. Ordinary people become extraordinary not because of talent or luck. They do it because they act when others hesitate, because they embrace risk and uncertainty as part of the journey." The host nodded, impressed. "So it's about courage?" Jamie smiled. "Exactly. Courage, hard work, and persistence. Those are the things anyone can muster if they truly commit. Dreams are fragile, but they're also powerful. And the only way to make them real is to keep moving forward, even when every step feels impossible. Later, back in the office, Malik and Jamie celebrated quietly. They didn't need champagne or flashy parties. Their reward was different now. It was the quiet satisfaction of knowing they had built something meaningful, something that had changed lives. They had created a platform that didn't just connect people, it empowered them. And in that, Jamie found fulfillment far beyond the numbers on a balance sheet. The transformation wasn't just external, it was internal. Jamie had changed from someone who feared risk into someone who embraced it. She had gone from doubt to confidence, from hesitation to bold action. Her dreams were no longer just fantasies whispered in the dark. They were living entities, shaping reality around her. She looked at her reflection in the office window and barely recognized the woman staring back. The exhaustion lines, the eyes wide from too many late nights, carried the weight of experience, resilience, and triumph. A knock at the door interrupted her reflection. A young entrepreneur entered nervously, clutching a notebook. "Ms. Jamie, I've followed your story. I want to ask for advice. I have an idea, but I'm scared it won't work." Jamie smiled gently. "Good. Being scared means it's real. That's where growth begins. Start small, take the first step, and keep moving forward. Fail fast, learn fast, and don't let anyone tell you your dreams are impossible. If you persist, you'll be surprised how far you can go." The young entrepreneur's eyes sparkled with hope, and Jamie felt a familiar thrill, the same one she had felt months ago, staring at her first lines of code, imagining the possibilities. She realized then that transformation wasn't just about wealth or fame. It was about inspiring others, proving that ordinary people could defy expectations, and showing that action mattered more than fear. As night fell, Jamie walked to the rooftop of their office building. The city stretched out beneath her, alive with lights, movement, and stories she would never know. She inhaled deeply, feeling the cool air on her face. The journey had changed her profoundly. She wasn't just a millionaire, she was a creator, a leader, and someone who had proven to herself that dreams, no matter how ordinary, were worth chasing. Somewhere in the city, another ordinary person was reading an article about Jamie and Malik, feeling that same spark of possibility that had ignited her own journey. That spark was contagious. And somewhere in that quiet moment, Jamie smiled, knowing that the cycle of transformation was beginning again. The journey never truly ended. It evolved, passing inspiration from one ordinary person to another, from one dream to the next. Jamie looked out at the horizon and whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." The platform they had built would continue to grow, but more importantly, the courage, persistence, and vision they had cultivated would ripple outward, touching lives in ways they could never fully measure. The climb had taught her that transformation wasn't just about changing your circumstances. It was about changing yourself, embracing fear, and daring to act even when the outcome was uncertain. And in that transformation, Jamie had found something far more valuable than millions. She had found herself.